When we think of the 19th century, we often conjure images of a world in flux, the Industrial Revolution reshaping societies, empires expanding, and technology bridging once unfathomable distances. But in the heart of this transformative era lies a story that is as dramatic as it is complex, a story of ambition, exploration, and the clash of cultures that would forever alter the map of a continent. Today, we are going to journey back in time to the Scramble for 19th century Africa, a period that saw European powers carve up a continent with breathtaking speed. And at the center of this maelstrom were three men whose names are etched into history. In part one of this presentation, we discuss David Livingstone, the missionary-explorer, and Henry Morton Stanley, the journalist adventurer. In part two, we will now look at South Africa and Cecil Rhodes, the imperial visionary. Their lives and legacies are inextricably linked to this period, and their actions would not only define their own fates, but also shape the destiny of millions. The first diamond discovered in South Africa was the Eureka diamond. The story of its discovery is often cited as the beginning of South Africa's mineral revolution and the great diamond rush that followed. A 15-year-old boy named Erasmus Jacobs found the stone on his father's farm on the banks of the Orange River near Hopetown in 1867. Jacobs, unaware of its value, was playing with the stone, which he thought was just a pretty pebble. A neighbor, a farmer named Schalk van Niekerk, saw the stone and, suspecting it might be a diamond, offered to buy it. Jacobs's mother instead gave it to him as a gift. Van Niekerk sent the stone to a mineralogist, Dr. William Gibbon Atherstone, who confirmed it was a genuine 21.25 carat diamond. The discovery of the Eureka diamond was initially met with some disbelief, but it sparked a surge of interest in the region. This was solidified a few years later with the discovery of the Star of South Africa and the major diamond deposits found in what would become the town of Kimberley. The Eureka diamond was later cut and is now on display at the Kimberley Mine Museum, having been purchased by De Beers and donated to the people of South Africa in 1967, 100 years after its discovery. The Star of South Africa, 1869. This discovery cemented the region's potential. It was found by a Griqua shepherd near the Orange River. This impressive 83.5 carat diamond was purchased by Schalk van Niekerk and sold for a large sum. News of this diamond's existence triggered the first major diamond rush, with thousands of prospectors flooding the area along the Orange and Vaal rivers. Diamonds were initially found along the Orange River as placer deposits recovered by panning. A placer diamond deposit is a type of secondary mineral deposit where diamonds have been naturally concentrated by flowing water, or less commonly, wind. They form when diamonds, originally found in primary source rocks like kimberlite pipes, are weathered out and then transported by rivers and streams. Because diamonds are extremely dense and hard, they settle out in areas where the water current slows, such as riverbeds, floodplains, or coastlines, while lighter materials are washed away. This process sifts and concentrates the diamonds into economically viable deposits. Let's take an overall look at what many people would consider the father of South Africa. He became a mining magnate and politician who played a dominant role in southern Africa in the late 19th century. He is a highly controversial figure whose legacy is viewed through the lenses of both his immense contributions to British imperialism and his role in establishing policies that laid the groundwork for racial segregation. Rhodes was born in 1853 in Bishop Stortford, England, the fifth son of a vicar, Francis William Rhodes. The family was prosperous enough to provide a solid education for their children. with some of his brothers attending prestigious public schools like Eton and Winchester. In contrast to his brothers, Cecil's childhood was overshadowed by a weak constitution, particularly a respiratory ailment that was believed at the time to be tuberculosis. This condition prevented him from attending a major public school, and instead he was educated at the local grammar school. The chronic illness led him to be described as a sickly and delicate child. By the age of 17, his poor health had become a major concern for his family. Following the advice of a doctor, his father sent him to the British colony of Natal in South Africa in 1870, hoping the warmer, drier climate would improve his health. He went to join his older brother Herbert, who had a cotton farm there. This journey to South Africa, initially a last-ditch effort to save his health, proved to be the pivotal moment in his life. The cotton farming venture was a failure, but the discovery of diamonds in the region quickly drew him to the Kimberley diamond fields, where he would begin his meteoric rise to wealth and power. Cecil John Rhodes arrived at the diamond fields near Kimberley in October 1871. He was 18 years old at the time. Financed by N.M. Rothschild and Sons, Rhodes succeeded over the next 17 years in buying up all the smaller diamond mining operations in the Kimberley area. He proved to be a shrewd businessman, and by 1888 he founded the De Beers Mining Company. By consolidating smaller mining claims, he gained a near monopoly on the world's diamond production, giving him extraordinary wealth. His monopoly of the world's diamond supply was sealed in 1890 through a strategic partnership with the London-based Diamond Syndicate. They agreed to control world supply to maintain high prices. As you will learn, his diamond adventures are only a small part of the Rhodes story. Rhodes was aware of the value of a good education, or at least the credentials they offer in business dealings. He persisted over a period of 8 years, from 1873 to 1881, by attending Oriel College, Oxford periodically, and finally attaining a BA degree in 1881. It was the swagger of an Oxford degree, the sense of belonging to an elite group with the advantageous contacts to be made that Rhodes had always sought. A life seriously planned and displaying the dark side of his ambition. At age 27, he chose to stand in the Berkeley West election. The constituency afforded him the opportunity to gain a seat in Parliament unopposed as one of its 2 members and within 15 miles of Kimberley. In seeking political office, Rhodes's purpose was to get the Cape government to build a railway line linking Kimberley to the ports to alleviate mining costs. For his own publicity, he bought a controlling interest in the Cape Argus, the main newspaper in the colony. After a decade in Parliament, he served as Prime Minister of the Cape Colony from 1890 to 1896. His political agenda was primarily focused on extending British control northwards and promoting the federation of the South African colonies under the British flag. This ambition led to the creation of the territory of Rhodesia, later split into present-day Zimbabwe and Zambia, which was named after him and administered by his British South Africa Company. We will discuss his time as Prime Minister in more detail later in the presentation. As the story of Rhodes centers around diamonds and precious metals, let's take a brief moment to look at the history of diamonds in South Africa. This picture shows the Kimberley diamond mine in 1872. The method for purchasing and holding diamond claims in South Africa in the early 1870s, particularly during the rush to Kimberley's dry diggings, was characterized by an initial system of small individual claims that was quickly overwhelmed and ultimately led to consolidation. The system was designed for the individual prospector or digger and was based on the principle of finders keepers under licenses. Claims were initially held by paying a small periodic license fee. Early mining laws proclaimed in 1871 in Griqualand West, where Kimberley was located, fixed the license money at a few shillings per month per claim. Initially, there were restrictions on how many claims an individual could own, which encouraged a large number of independent diggers, estimated at 50,000 by 1873. The small claims system created a unique and chaotic mining landscape. Thousands of individual claims were pegged out on the surface of the kimberlite pipe, the volcanic rock containing the diamonds. As diggers worked their small squares deeper, a chaotic pit, the famous Big Hole at Kimberley, was formed. At the same time, the yellow ground that diggers found so lucrative was becoming exhausted and was getting deeper, subjected to cave-ins and water influx. The yellow ground was the weathered and oxidized upper layer of the kimberlite pipe, the diamond-bearing volcanic rock that forms the core of the Kimberley mines. It was the surface expression of a volcanic pipe that had pushed up from deep within the earth. Over millions of years, the upper portion of this pipe was exposed to the elements. This exposure to air and water caused the original hard rock to break down. The color came from the oxidation of iron compounds in the rock, turning the earth a rusty yellow or brown. Many diggers sold their mineral rights to Rhodes. The blue ground under the yellow ground was much richer. Rhodes suspected this from geological sampling he had commissioned. The shift from soft yellow ground to hard blue ground marked the end of the independent digger era. It necessitated the use of explosives, large-scale crushing machinery, and huge capital investment, forcing the smaller claim holders to sell out to the wealthy entrepreneurs like Cecil Rhodes and Barney Barnato, leading to the formation of consolidated mining companies. The technical and financial challenges of deep-level mining in the mid to late 1870s forced a drastic change. Small-scale diggers could not afford the equipment, and labor needed to continue, especially when diamond prices dropped. They were forced to sell their individual claims to wealthier entrepreneurs. Men like Cecil Rhodes and Barney Barnato began to purchase thousands of these adjacent small claims, merging them into much larger holdings. Rhodes, for instance, invested early on and systematically bought up claims. This process of consolidation culminated in 1888 with the formation of De Beers Consolidated Mines Limited by Cecil Rhodes, which brought virtually all of the diamond mines in the area under the control of a single company, ending the era of the independent digger and the small individual claim. Kimberlite pipes are rare, carrot-shaped vertical rock structures that serve as the primary source of most of the world's diamonds. They are essentially the solidified conduits through which an explosive, ultra-deep volcanic material erupted from the Earth's mantle. The rock and the pipe are named after Kimberley, South Africa, where they were first identified and mined extensively in the 1870s. During his tenure in the diamond mining business, our Mr. Rhodes was very creative at solving engineering issues and financially astute in picking up the claims at bargain prices. During the diamond boom in 1875, deeper mines were getting flooded, and Rhodes figured out that specialized pumping equipment would solve the mining problems. The world was flooded with diamonds by 1876. Rhodes solved by consolidating and creating a monopoly to fix diamond prices. After the recovery, digging deeper into the blue ground that no one realized was prospective. The discovery of gold in the Transvaal in 1886, specifically on the Witwatersrand Ridge, was a monumental turning point in South African and global history, leading to the Witwatersrand Gold Rush and the establishment of Johannesburg. The gold was found on the farm Langlaagte on the Witwatersrand, Afrikaans for Whitewater Ridge, in the South African Republic, ZAR, which was the Boer Republic known as the Transvaal. The discovery of the main gold reef is generally credited to Australian prospector George Harrison in early 1886, though there is a history of earlier minor finds by others, such as Jan Gerrit Bantjes and the Struben brothers. This was not a short-lived surface find. The gold was contained in vast, continuous, deep-level reefs embedded in conglomerates. The field, often called the Rand or the Reef, proved to be the largest and most concentrated gold deposit ever discovered. The Witwatersrand Basin has since produced an estimated 30 to 40% of all the world's gold ever mined. Rhodes bought what was considered played-out claims, realizing from geological work that the more lucrative prospects lay beneath claims at depths of 1,000 plus feet. He also realized that the main reef was dipping steeply and to the south, so he also bought up that acreage. German geologist Karl Mauch, 1867, returned from travels to the north of the Limpopo to announce that he had discovered 2 gold-bearing reefs in Mashonaland. Rider Haggard, the author, picked up the idea while he was stationed in the Transvaal and, on his return to England, turned it into a hugely successful novel, King Solomon's Mines. Rhodes and his associates believed there was a vast untapped goldfield, namely a second Rand, to be found north of the Limpopo River, in the region encompassing Matabeleland and Mashonaland, present-day Zimbabwe. This belief was fueled by ancient mine workings in the area. The desire to find and exploit this rumored gold and secure the road to the north became central to his imperial strategy, especially after his political and financial interests clashed with the powerful and independent Boer government of the Transvaal. To gain a legal basis for his territorial claims, Rhodes sent his business partner Charles Rudd and other agents to negotiate with King Lobengula of the Ndebele people, who held dominion over both Matabeleland and Mashonaland. The resulting agreement, the Rudd Concession, granted Rhodes's syndicate exclusive mineral rights in Lobengula's kingdom in exchange for arms and a monthly payment. Lobengula later protested, claiming he had been tricked and that the oral promises, such as limiting the number of white men, were violated or deliberately excluded from the written document, which also gave Rhodes's agents the right to take whatever action they considered necessary to exploit the minerals. Using the Rudd Concession, Rhodes convinced the British government to grant him a royal charter for the British South Africa Company. This charter granted the BSAC sweeping administrative, legislative, and military powers over the vast territory north of the Limpopo River, essentially turning it into a private company colony. The BSAC immediately organized the Pioneer Column, a group of settlers and police who marched north and established Fort Salisbury, now Harare, in Mashonaland. This marked the effective annexation and beginning of white settlement, officially to exploit the gold, but also to seize land and establish control. The territory eventually acquired by Rhodes's company was later named Rhodesia after him, now Zimbabwe and Zambia. While the anticipated second Rand of gold never materialized on the scale of the Transvaal, the BSAC consolidated its control, leading to conflict with the Ndebele and Mashona people and fundamentally altering the history of southern Africa. Let's now examine the period from 1890 to 1896, when Rhodes is the Prime Minister of the Cape Colony. Rhodes was seen as upholding the traditions set by Livingstone and Stanley, blazing a trail that would bring civilization to a benighted continent. He wanted to further British imperial ambitions to control the whole African continent. Rhodes implemented policies designed to limit the political and economic power of black Africans, laying groundwork for future segregation and discriminatory laws. He aimed for the eventual union or federation of the various South African states, both British colonies and Boer republics, under the British flag. His platform was closely tied to his vast business interests in the diamond and gold mining industries. He sought to create a political and economic environment that benefited the colonial administration and mine owners. As Prime Minister, he initially cultivated the political support of the Afrikaner Bond, the main political party representing Afrikaner farmers, to pursue his wider goals. Back in Parliament in Cape Town, Rhodes pressed for new legislation to suit the needs of mine owners, as well as campaigning for a railway linking Kimberley to the Cape. One of Rhodes's dreams was for a red line on the map from the Cape to Cairo. On geopolitical maps, British dominions were always denoted in red or pink. To annex or control all of the land between Cape Town and the British-controlled Cape Colony, South Africa, and Cairo, in British-influenced Egypt. This would symbolically and literally paint the map red from the bottom to the top of the continent, as shown on the map. Rhodes had been instrumental in securing southern African states for the British Empire. He felt the best way to unify the possessions, facilitate governance, enable the military to move quickly to hotspots or conduct war, help settlement and foster trade, would be to build the Cape to Cairo Railway. The Cape to Cairo Railway was an ambitious, uncompleted railway project conceived to run the entire length of the African continent from Cape Town, South Africa, to Cairo, Egypt. The most ambitious and the most improbable of all railroad dreams, and it failed, but only just. No continuous line from Cairo to the Cape of Good Hope, which would have linked Britain's African colonies, was ever built. Nevertheless, construction started on a through rail route in the 1880s, and one did eventually emerge 40 years later, although hundreds of miles of transfers via lakes and rivers were necessary to complete the journey. Rhodes had stated the iron spine would pick up trade all the way along the route, and crucially would run entirely through British imperial territory. Pictured is the famous Victoria Falls Zambezi Bridge, started by him and finally completed in 1905. The bridge was originally constructed in England and reassembled in situ. Rhodes wanted a crossing at the point where the spray from the falls would fall on the train carriages crossing the bridge. Rhodes was forced to resign as PM in 1896 after the Jameson Raid, an unauthorized and disastrous military incursion into the South African Republic of the Transvaal in late 1895 by British colonial forces. It was a pivotal event that severely heightened tensions between the British and the Boer republics, directly contributing to the Second Boer War, 1899 to 1902. The raid was part of a larger conspiracy orchestrated by Rhodes, who wanted to bring the wealthy, gold-rich Transvaal under British control. However, he did not withdraw from public life entirely. He immediately shifted his focus to the territory he had chartered and named after himself, Rhodesia. Rhodes dedicated his energy to the development and consolidation of the territories administered by his British South Africa Company. Immediately following the Jameson Raid, the region experienced the Second Matabele War and the Shona Uprising in 1896 to 1897. Rhodes personally went to the region, most notably entering the Matopus Hills to negotiate peace with the Ndebele chiefs in a famous unarmed meeting. His most enduring action was finalizing his will and testament. Upon his death in 1902, his massive estate was primarily used to establish the Rhodes Scholarships at Oxford University. The trust fund was created to bring students primarily from the British colonies, the United States and Germany, to study at Oxford, with the stated aim of promoting public-spirited leadership throughout the English-speaking world. Rhodes died in Muizenberg, Cape Colony, in March 1902, 2 months before the end of the Second Boer War, a conflict that his own actions had heavily contributed to igniting. After Rhodes's death in 1902, at the age of 48, he was buried in the Matopos Hills in what is now Zimbabwe. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel by pressing the subscribe and like buttons below. We are planning to add many more presentations covering a wide variety of science, history, and other enriching subjects. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to make them, and we will do our best to respond. Again, thanks for watching, and please do subscribe.